What is big? What does it do? Well, it walks around there.
There was a crane standing there, so they are building something serious.
Can you get me an expensive sofa?
Is there moss in Bali or not?
I made about 40% in a year. They don't use waterproofing. So I bought it, and 2 days later everything fell apart. What do you feel when you finish building a house? At the same time, we're building another 640 houses. We don't need investor money at the initial stage. Hello.
My name is Andrey Balinsky. Today we are at the LOYO Villas complex. Next to me are Philipp, Orlov, and Vasiliy Cherbadzhi, co-founders of LOYO and Bondar, now LB Group, because it's not just a construction company anymore, but also factories for production. We're going to chat and get to know the guys a little better. We'll find out how they feel about having built this villa we're in right now. We'll also address the rumors that are out there about LOYO and Bondar. I'll try to be as unbiased as possible, but still ethical. There's the question, they build with crap and sticks, right? And from what agents have written in anonymous responses or, questions, or rather, statements, to be more accurate, they say they build with crap and sticks.
Agents say, it's always easier to trash something. That's easy. Easy to say that. He ran off. Why? How? No one really looked into it. Into what, exactly? Again, construction is such a process. It's a complicated process. I wouldn't say it's easy, and in these climate conditions, it's even harder. Well, even in our countries, we have summer and winter too, so it's a tough process. In winter, you try to close everything up quickly and get inside. Here, there's constant humidity. Last season, you and I dealt with a really heavy rainy season, which pointed out a lot of things we hadn't really paid attention to before. Well, not that we ignored them, but we just weren't as focused on them because we hadn't had such heavy rains before. Those rains really showed us a lot of things we need to pay attention to. And those things are surprising, like in our countries, for example, it's not mold but moss that grows on the walls, and here it appears so quickly, while back home it would take years. Well, on the exterior walls, yes, but when you're building the frame, before you put the roof on, the interior walls that don't get any sunlight, within 2 or 3 months, that's it, you've got greenery growing. That doesn't mean you did a bad job. You can't just cover your building with a dome, put the roof on right away, and then start putting up the walls. That's just, well, nonsense. You physically can't do that. Nobody does it that way.
What do you do?
Nothing. You just keep building. Yeah. You get those green patches on the walls, maybe even on the concrete, and then you treat all of that. It's not mold because of, again, people don't really understand the difference between mold and moss, why moss appears, why mold appears.
Is there moss in Bali?
How could there not be?
Moss can appear?
Well, of course it can. It's on all the walls where sunlight doesn't reach. Well, we have humidity here. It's higher than in other countries. It's like a greenhouse. Cool. We like it. We live here. And in places where the sun doesn't shine, greenery appears. It's not mold, it's moss. But in our understanding, moss is like the kind that grows in our countries, and you can just peel it off. But here, it's different. Here, it's not the kind with big clumps. Well, sometimes you can find older moss like that somewhere in the jungle, but here, it just appears and suddenly your wall is green. In fact, it doesn't pose any threat to the building itself. Well, it can affect the finishing. What does it affect? Over time, it'll dry out, because eventually you'll plaster over it, you'll seal it up, and it can't survive without moisture, since it's always going to be drier inside. The only problem you'll have is that your finishing layer might start to come off. So basically, the plaster starts to come loose, it crumbles, and falls off.
Don't clean it.
If you don't clean it.
So, it doesn't harm your health.
The building won't collapse, but your interior finishing will be a problem for you. So, basically, the person who bought it with these kinds of flaws will eventually have to deal with doing renovations, for example.
How often?
Well, I don't know. You have to see how thick the layer is and so on. Maybe once a year you'll have to do this renovation. Well, like after a year, for example, you'll have to remove everything, plaster it, and basically redo it all. So you'll end up spending that money. It's nothing too terrible, but it's unpleasant. Whenever you do something, I always say, put yourself in the client's shoes, or think about yourself as a client. What would I like or what would I not want to see? I mean, for me, it wouldn't matter. Even if you bought it for $20,000 or for millions, it would still be unpleasant for me if I bought something and then 2 days later everything started falling apart.
The sales department of LOYO and Bondar has prepared the 3 most advantageous offers of this month. The best prices, updated promotions, and exclusive special offers are gathered in one presentation. Find out where to invest this month for maximum benefit for yourself or your clients. Scan the QR code on the screen and follow the link in the description. And in just 5 minutes, the top 3 offers will be in your hands. LOYO and Bondar, your best investment solutions.
How is it that a large complex ends up being simpler than a small one? Well, let me clarify a bit more. Because again, this is due to, well, my lack of expertise in construction, you know. For me, whenever I see a crane, in my mind that's something incredibly complicated, right? And well, every day, my view is actually of the ocean and a crane. So it's the perfect picture of Bali. What's happening here right now?
A crane. The point of a crane isn't that it's complicated. It's just that when you don't understand it, it seems so big. You wonder what it's doing. It's moving around, doing something grand. But in reality, it's nothing special. Actually, the crane is there to help you. A crane moves materials from one point of the construction site to another very quickly.
First of all, you have to bring it here and unload it. So you see, that's another thing. One of our unique features, by the way, we'll go soon and show everyone, is that we have warehouse facilities. For me, that was also a question. Where's the optimization? Warehouse facilities. Most developers lack warehouse facilities. Ours are the size of a football field.
Let me interrupt you. Right now, as we're recording this, we're telling people, but we're also teaching people how to work. Honestly, I'm not shy about what we can say. Or maybe we're raising someone up, like they'll watch our videos, listen to how we do things, and then they'll do the same. That's totally fine. You can tell anyone how it's done, but whether you can actually do it or not is another question. Why doesn't everyone have it? Yeah, someone might hear us right now, like Philipp is talking about our warehouses. They'll think that's a great idea.
So for me, it was a strange story. But let's take Melasti, that whole villa, for example. We had everything stored at Melasti since January. I think, yeah, probably. In January, we had all the equipment for each unit ready. That allows us, it's 61 kitchens. You get what a huge volume that is, and that's just for Melasti. If you don't have it stored and you need to order 61 kitchens, let's say you're building 61 villas, you need to order 61 kitchens. How are they going to deliver them to you from Indonesia? 61 kitchens. Where would you even put them?
On street.
Well, logically, yeah. Look, for me, it's like this. So, there was nothing. Construction started, and then a building appeared. And it's really cool when there was a crane there in between. That means they're actually building something serious there.
See, that's how we builders think. I've always said that we need a crane, at least for sales. Vasiliy says, you guys, they say, you can't do that. He sales, construction matters more. Construction over sales. We need the crane for sales. You get it? So, that's why some things. I'll get back to the big project now. Because a big project, let's say, the structure of a big project, it's not the way you and I think it is. I mean, all these beautiful pools and architectural solutions. They're great and all. But I see how architects are creating this now. The foundation, how to pour the concrete properly, how to build these boxes, and how to run the engineering. You see what I mean? And all of this is put together with pretty standard volumes. So basically, the engineering for 20 units and the engineering for 120 units. Structurally, it's just.
Let's take IXO, for example. We're pouring a floor there and our building is 30 meters long. And it's easier to tie the rebar for the slab. So people line up, and they tie rebar along those 30 meters in length, and like 8 to 10 meters in width. They tie it up. There's a process. It's not like everyone ties however they want. There are blueprints. The blueprints show a specific column is drawn with diagrams, with measurements, what kind of rebar, how it should be tied. It's not just, people making things out of whatever junk they find. Some people might do that, and like I've said before, and I keep repeating it in our podcasts when we record. But no, we have strict blueprints that were made by the Indonesian team. Our guys double-check everything. From my own perspective, what I see, if there's something I like or don't like about how it's done, or on the contrary, if I think we should play it safe, because I worry about these things. And that's it. People got up and they're working. It's easier for them. But here, with the small villas, you tie everything together, then you have to stop, go up to the deck, move to another spot, and start tying things again. And that's why, even in any job, at least in construction, and I think in other fields too, everyone likes working with big volumes. When you have a large amount of work, you can get up and really work efficiently. You know you have a big area over there, and that's where they set up. A team of 15 people comes in, and they can get it done quickly. But if those 15 people try to work on these small villas, they'll just get in each other's way. They can't do it. There should only be 5 people here.
Agents don't always understand how this works, how to assess construction quality, which no one can figure out. Why do they say that? Why do these rumors spread? Because agents don't operate from a position of expertise in construction. They operate from the perspective of protecting the client from things that seem scary. And it's scary where agents were at some developer's event, drinking Prosecco, and heard that this particular developer is bad. All of this starts spreading at that event, and after that, they believe the developer's reputation is ruined. That's basically how it works, right? And the problem is that there aren't any simple, clear tools to figure out what kind of quality you're dealing with. For example, there's that hammer test. There's K300. K300 is considered good, and 250 is just okay. So how do you figure out things like that? And what are they? I think the main thing is making sure the building doesn't collapse, which depends on the concrete quality in the columns. Second is waterproofing, especially in Bali. Third is the finishing work. So are these 3 key components, or is something important?
These are the 3 key components. Well, when people come who don't know much about construction, and also agents, if an agent wants to make sure, like, for example, I put myself in the client's shoes when I come to a new property, or maybe it hasn't even been built yet, or some work is just starting. At the very least, a person should try to understand a little bit about this, pay some attention, maybe look things up online, read about it, and come there with the agent. And the agent should request the project documentation from the developer. There is always some documentation at the sites, maybe not the most detailed, but at this stage of the work, for example, they're doing foundation work. That's it, show me your project. Well, your documents, and point out to me, here, you're working on pouring the foundation. There is always specific rebar and certain piles on the foundation. Open the foundation section, the relevant part. Look, it says there, 16th gauge rebar of a certain quality. You go over, they show you 16th gauge rebar, this many pieces. Everything is drawn out for you. You calculate, check it out, everything's great. About hammer tests. Yes, you can do a hammer test too, but you need to ask the developer when this concrete was poured. It's not like the concrete was poured yesterday and you want to do a hammer test. I mean, that just doesn't work. Ideally, it should be at least a month. You can do it after 2 weeks, but that's still not really accurate. Yes, in practice it gains strength. You can calculate something, but I always recommend a month. Wait a month, because here it might be raining, or it's too humid, and so on and so forth. A month is the normal state for concrete. Yeah, that's the first point.
The second point is waterproofing. It's clear, the whole building is standing. For example, we've figured it out, the building is up. The second thing is waterproofing. Well, I guess everyone has heard about this, that there's mold here. It's terrible. You could die from lung cancer and so on. How is this issue solved here?
As for how we solve it,
Let me start with the first question, and Vasiliy will continue. First question. I've been coming here for 10 years, right? And before all the foreigners came, we all lived in goose houses and villas built by Indonesians, right?
Me too.
And just so you understand the market, let's say about 98% of all buildings in Bali are built by Indonesians, right? They don't use waterproofing. So let's start with the basics, which was also surprising to me. They don't use waterproofing. And when Vasiliy explains this now, when Vasiliy teaches people how to do waterproofing, the Indonesians kind of think he's crazy. Vasiliy.
well, we use the methods that we have in our countries. And here, on we can even.
What do you mean by in our countries? Look, this is also an important point, but here's an important point. You built in Odessa, right?
Ukraine.
By the sea. So, the location also has high humidity.
Yup.
How much do the conditions in Odessa, in terms of humidity and all that, differ from Bali, for example?
We have winter, you know? We have winter. Here there's no winter. We have this.
What means?
It means that we have certain things. For example, when you pour concrete, you have to do it at a certain temperature. Or if you pour it in winter, you have to heat the rebar, heat the concrete, add certain additives. Here, you don't have to do that.
So it's easier.
Well, yeah, it's kind of easier.
And what's harder? Because everyone here says, well, this is Bali. There are unique things about construction here. What are they?
It's hard there and it's hard here. You can't say it's easy there and hard here. No, there are just different issues here. You have to relearn some things. What we have back home, they don't have here. And what they have here, we don't have back home. Can you really compare them?
Well, what's the main thing then?
Well, how can you compare? Well, it's a different climate. That's it. That's the main thing. It's just different. Like in winter, if you mess something up, the screed cracks back home. Besides waterproofing, we also insulate our foundation. Here, we don't do that. Well, here it's just not necessary. And the waterproofing we do here, again, we do it, but Indonesians don't. And it's not even in our project plans.
What makes it harder here than back home?
Simple. We lay down the same roofing felt as we do in our countries. So, in addition to pouring concrete and adding an additive to it, which is what we call waterproofing, although that's not really the correct term, but I'm just explaining it in a way that's easy for people to understand. And after we've poured everything and done it correctly, the first floor, which, well, the first so-called waterproofing layer, the horizontal waterproofing that blocks moisture from the ground, which would otherwise seep into the floor and then transfer to the walls, making your walls damp, and so on. This is something standard everywhere in Bali, but the locals don't do it. Although the guy who works with us, now, at his own house, he's doing what we do. We do basic things, like putting down a rough screed and gluing roofing felt. And then we lay the main screed and put the tiles on top of that. That's how it's done here.
But now, if you come to some construction sites, how can you check that everything is okay with the waterproofing?
We can, right here. If someone doesn't believe it, break it open as a bet and get down to the waterproofing layer I installed.
But what if, instead of such radical methods, we just visit a construction site?
Well, if the tiles are already installed, you either have to break something on the side or you have to see it mechanically. We have recorded videos, again, you can.
You watch them, what's the point? Look, there's a hole right there.
This stage, the roofing felt that was laid, and you're looking right at it. And besides that, this concerns the screeds inside the rooms and the waterproofing that's applied horizontally on the walls, which also blocks moisture from the foundation that rises up the walls. When our clients buy a particular villa and say, "We don't want it to be serviced, just leave everything as it is." Well, how do you imagine that? We'll just leave this villa, we'll mothball it right now. There's a pool, everything's there. So, as it is, there's a pool. We turn everything off, turn off the lights, supposedly no expenses. But if we come back in a month or even a week, everything will be overgrown, first of all. There will be spiders and ants everywhere. The pool will turn green, and frogs and toads will start living there. And who knows what else will start coming out of that pool. Nature just starts to take over everything that's here. And we'll have a closed-up room, and inside it will smell musty. It's not because you did a bad job. It's just that nature itself is fighting against what we do. After all, we're just guests here. We're not permanent. And everything we create isn't permanent either. Nature wants to fight back in its own way. It fights back with its own, well, natural, organic means. And people, well, yeah, it doesn't mean we should do a bad job, but everything we've created, we have to take care of it.
And also, once again, as a company, we produce investment real estate. It's a huge difference compared to owning your own property. Because you know yourself, you can see it. Right now in our complexes, we've only been open for 2 months, and we're already over 80% occupancy. Yeah, and on average too, highlight this. People usually come to a place for about 2.8 nights. You remember that statistic, right? I think people will stay even longer. Up to 5 days, up to 5 days. What does 5 days at a villa mean? People who come here, excuse me, to party and relax. Right. How can you? For example, everyone asks us, why can you put an expensive sofa in for me? I want to put in an expensive sofa with my own money. We tell them you'll end up buying a new sofa every month. When you're dealing with investment property, your goal is to make sure it can be rented out and is practical. Because the next question investors ask us is, who's going to pay for all these replacements? And the feeling, I don't know, do you actually feel like the owner of this house or...
It's not exactly like you're the owner of the house. You put your heart into it, spend a lot of time, and you do feel, at least I do. It's not like I just finish the project and forget about it and walk away. No, not at all. That's why we manage it, and it's still our brainchild. And we explain this to our investors too, that we're not abandoning you. It's not like we just sold you a villa and that's it. Don't bother us anymore.
Let me rephrase it for you. Right now, the most enjoyable thing for us isn't the villa itself. What really makes us happy right now are the reviews on Booking.com. And our management company sends us the occupancy rate every day. Usually, it's considered good to start the month with a 40% occupancy rate, because then you can fill up the rest as you go. Right now, for June, we already have 50 to 60% occupancy. That is, in May I'm already almost 70, and that's nice. And when you see those perfect 10s on Booking.com, that's really the most important thing, to know that people appreciate it. I mean, we evaluate ourselves, but when guests appreciate it, even more than investors, because honestly, investors don't always fully understand things from a distance. What matters to us is the feedback from tourists. Well, I guess we'll wrap up our interview here. The only thing is, you said you're open to questions, and that's awesome. So, for anyone who wants to ask an additional question that I didn't cover, just write it in the comments. Actually, I have an idea. Andrey, since you're one of the main voices in this market, right? You could easily. We could host an open business breakfast.
Sure.
Vasiliy and whoever else is needed will come about construction. If people are willing to discuss, we can hold a business breakfast where we'll do the same, but also answer viewers' questions. Awesome. Great. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.